Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. Oh, we are going to have a great show. We're going to be speaking with Evan and Steve Strong about the hidden history of Australia. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy healing, and psychic reading. So if there's stuff going on in your life, give me a call, send me an email, and we can set up a time for a private consultation. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading their free 50-page guide. So if you've been thinking about becoming an energy medicine practitioner, intuitive counselor, or medical intuitive, this is the place you can go to start your learning from the comfort of your own home. That's AppliedEnergeticsInstitute.com. And I want to thank all the people that have downloaded and viewed my movie icon, Deconstructing the Archetypes of the Ancients. I've gotten several really great reviews on Amazon. So if you haven't gotten a copy or haven't downloaded a copy and watched it, please check it out. Only $1.99. What a bargain. And there were good reviews. Woohoo. Anyway, so again, tonight we're going to be speaking with Stephen and Evan Strong about their book, Expunge, The Hidden History of the Original Australians. Let me tell you a little bit about them and get them on the air. Stephen and Evan Strong challenge the out-of-Africa theory of human evolution and posit that Homo sapiens sapiens evolved independently in Australia. They argue against the perception of the original Aboriginal Australians as primitive and challenge this with an examination of actual technological achievements of the race. By looking at archaeological, historical, linguistic, and DNA evidence, they believe that original Australians were capable of ocean-going voyages and had commerce with distant lands from north of Africa to Latin America. We are going to have a great show tonight. So please welcome to the show, Stephen and Evan Strong. Hi, guys. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Very happy to be here.
Well, greetings from the land not down under. I'm just so excited to have you guys back on the show. You were on before, and we got a number of requests to have you come back on and share more information. I'm just glad that you were able to take time out of your busy schedule to join us again.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and I also appreciate that just before we started, you did a wonderful backup to Janis Joplin with Piece of My Heart, and we do appreciate that too. We've never been serenaded before we started before, but it was a fine choice of music.
Well, Janis is one of my favorite female artists. Sorry, she is my favorite female artist. So having them decide that that was going to be the song that they would play every week before the show started just made me have the warm and fuzzies inside. So
that's fine. It works for me. I bought the album when it was first out, and I think that was over 10 years ago. I'm not sure, but I think it was around that time.
Maybe. I don't know. I have so much to talk to you guys about. I wanted to pick up where we left off a little bit, get it caught up on some of the new stuff that's going on with you, and then get into your book, Shunned. The last time we talked, you were getting ready to have Graham Hancock come and spend some time in Australia looking at some of the ruins down there. And I was just wondering how that went. What was his opinion? What did you find out?
Well, it went very well because we spent, about 6 days, Evan? And we made it a rule at the finish, if he was going to do this properly, he had to spend time with an original elder steeped in the old ways, which he did. But, we took him to a lot of sites. There were a couple that I think really stood out. We took him to the Standing Stone site, which we've mentioned before, and he wanted to come and look at that. And he was able to stand on there and photograph the whole thing. He saw all these amazing marked rocks, and he did get a very strong connection and understanding of its antiquity and what it was there for. He has no doubt that it was an ancient way of chronicling our past and our language. And we then went off to a place up near Gympie, didn't we, Evan?
Yeah. We hadn't been there before ourselves, actually.
No, we went up to a place that's called the Gympie Pyramid, and it was Graham's insistence we go there, not ours. We knew of a gentleman that knew a lot about the site, and we drove up there and went back in one day, and when we got there, I looked at the site and thought, oh, what an absolute disappointment. It was just a hill with blady grass, but...
However, it's changed.
This gentleman brought out 2 rocks to show us. And they were both sedimentary rocks. And what he did was, the first one, he actually held a rock and he held a magnet and let the magnet go, and it flew through the air and hit the rock.
The magnet was from a computer hard drive.
Yeah. And that was quite a good trick, and I thought that's unusual because it's sedimentary. Then he put the magnet on the other side of the rock and it fell off. I thought, that's not quite right. That's not how things are supposed to work here. This is an unusual place. We knew it was a sacred place, but we didn't know quite how sacred it was. And then further on, we found out there's another rock there where you can put the magnets on the top of the rock and it's magnetised, and you put it in any rocks and it falls off again. So the place was sacred to begin with. We'd heard about that, but now we know that there's an energy force in there that's messing up the magnetics of these rocks, because sedimentary rocks don't become so massively magnetised. So we then took him up to this particular place, and he saw rocks there that he claimed looked exactly like, it was a Machu Picchu, didn't he?
Yeah.
And then went up to the top again, and then we saw a healing place there. And then he started to realise that as we took him to other sites, we took him down to Carryong, and we saw the glyphs down there, 300 glyphs. As he said, that these places could rewrite world history. And what he didn't understand, because we took him to a lot of sites, is why there was so much in this country. That's the one thing that he did get to understand quite fully, that there was so much archaeology within our country. And then we finished it off in a very unusual way. Rita, we actually finished by him sitting down with an elder of the old ways. Now, a lot of people in your country might think that if what I'm going to say next is past history that is gone, that people can still do things that are outside time and space. But the beauty of this was, when this took place, there were about 9 or 10 people there that saw it, including Evan and quite a few others.
Oh, yeah, I definitely saw it.
And plus Graham and Santha were there at the time. Now, what happened was the elder came out dressed up old way, with ochre all over, and started singing in language, and then spoke occasionally in English, and spoke for about, 15, 20 minutes?
Yep.
And then when it finished, he walked back a step, and we all watched him walk back a step. Then he walked back the second step. He's gone.
He disappeared.
Completely disappeared. And then about 1 second later, there he is, about 25 metres away, standing behind someone else, and he carries on the conversation he left behind with a huge smile on his face. I can tell you that Graham's mouth couldn't have been any left wider open. Mine wasn't either, to be honest. So what he learned was he got to see, we showed him quite a few different places. There were ancient civilizations here. He fully understands that and agrees with that. But he also got to understand that the heritage of this country, and it was the first place, it was the place where genetics begins, and it's the place where culture begins too. And it's also the place where magic begins. And I'm going to tell you that the scientists may not like this, but it's still here. We've seen it. And so has Graham. So, yeah, it was an interesting talk and time.
Good. And we're going to get into all of that in our conversation tonight. I have a question about the not so exciting pyramid. Has anybody done any excavation? I mean, could it just be covered up with dirt and there's actually something magnificent below?
Oh, look, it's a 7-step pyramid. You've got to remember the Australian government have been actively destroying the whole area. They've worked against this, and right now there's a better than 95% chance it's going to be bulldozed for a road.
Unfortunately, in this country, nothing stops a road.
I spoke to the Cubby yesterday, and they're dreadfully worried. They've been fighting for this site. They call it the most sacred site they have. They don't even call it a pyramid. They call it the healing place. And I can't go into the reasons why, because the stories about that are so amazing that we'd spend the rest of the day just talking about that alone. This place is multifarious, and we also know that the most amazing artefact that is at that site, don't we? I mean, we can't even speak about it. But the concern is right now that the chances are very, very high it's going to be just bulldozed, the whole site. And there's nothing we can do. And the original custodians are fighting tooth and nail and begging the government not to do so. But I can tell you now, this particular place, it's been destroyed and changed and hidden, and the government have no intentions of letting this be looked at. So as for excavating and going on there, they'd lock you up. I've already got a letter from the New South Wales government, haven't I, threatening me.
And a phone call.
And a phone call threatening us for even going near any site. That one, we'd be in jail inside a day. Won't let us near it. It's only got one death. That place is going to be destroyed. They can't leave it there.
It's not important, but they'd put you in jail for it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this particular site, the one here that they've been, the original people know. Look, we know. We can't even tell you some of the stuff that's on that place. I mean, Graham stood there and said, this is an amazing site. This is so important. He wants to write a whole chapter about that in his next book. But he want to hurry, because if he doesn't get it done soon, it won't be there. That's one of the reasons we've pushed Graham to really pick this site up a bit, because it's going to need help. Because the Australian government have been trying to destroy this site, and they've been pulling it apart for so long. They've pulled the 5 statues off. There's only one left. And the Gubby know how sacred it is, but there's one group that just don't want this out.
Amazing. Just amazing.
It's called Australia.
Yeah.
But it's not just there. You know, you see it happening in other places, not everywhere, but you see it happening in other places, and it's just amazing, especially because Australia is so old and it's, you know, unadulterated. You know, it hasn't been tampered with because no one was interested in it. And so it's losing you lose that pristineness that it still has.
But that's its weakness, you see, Rita, because we're finding archaeology now. We're finding some rocks that have actually gone to the Smithsonian Institute, and they've written back twice about it and fully aware of it. These rocks are so amazing, and the beauty of it is that the history books say in Australia, before Captain Cook and the British invaded the country, they didn't settle it, they stole it. When they came, they said there was nothing here before then. So anything we find, and we're finding bucket loads of stuff now, doesn't fit into all of their books. And what it doesn't just rewrite the history of Australia, which is important. It rewrites the history of the world, because there's a new player in here. And I'm looking at rocks now that the Smithsonian are also looking at, and we've seen multiple replies from them, haven't we? Yeah. And I don't know if that's such a good thing, but that's in material right now. We're looking at technology on a rock that's at least 20,000 years old, and we know it is, that you cannot do today. Now, there's some real problems with that, and we know this rock has gone through academia in Australia, and there's a saying we've heard from academics within, it's called "don't tell the strongs." They're so scared of these two rocks, they do not want to talk about them, they do not want to engage in conversation with us, and some people get violently upset. What they don't do is contest what we've said about these rocks with their own papers, because they're scared of them. So there's stuff here.
Is it because there's like evidence of machining on them? What makes them be so special? Well,
let me explain. With the two rocks we're talking about, Ross's Rock 1 and 2, which we first saw in the company of Michael Tellinger. I remember that too.
Yes.
What we've been told by some of the most qualified academics in this country is these rocks were melted, and they are one of the hardest rocks you'll find in Australia. It was melted, and then the markings were cut on with a knife. And then there's infilling and stamping and imprinting. There's all sorts of technologies going in here. There are holes there that have been filled up with a foreign substance and have stayed there for 20,000 years, stuck inside that rock. There's stamping on this rock. There's cutting on this rock. There's all sorts of, and there's pecking on the rock as well. There are around about 700 marks on these two rocks. They're a language. There's that, but there's also a technology that this rock, these two particular rocks, if I bought a saw or chisel today and smashed them with a blade, I wouldn't mark them. Now, the question is, how can these rocks be marked 20, 30, 50,000 years ago? And we've got them both, and they know they're here. So the answer is they're all going to run away and not look at us.
Head in the sand.
Yes, and it worked for the ostrich when the lion was attacking, didn't it? Until he got his body bitten off.
There's also the angles of the lines are very important.
Oh, yeah. Look, one of these rocks we've got there, it's got a map. I think it's a star map. Well, we'll see about that anyway. But what's fascinating is on that particular side there, the one I'm looking at now, it's got one angle repeated 7 times, 33 degrees. The rock was found at 33 degrees latitude, 1 metre beneath the surface when it was excavated in 1990. So if that's a coincidence, I don't believe it is. And then we've got to think about the fact that 10, 20, 30,000 years ago, the original people knew about latitude. Well, no, according to the books, they were naked, they didn't have a book, they didn't have a building, and they had sticks, stones and bones.
Now, yeah, but with the angles, there's a certain degree. So one of our people we work with, Dr. Derek Cunningham, measured the angles. Now, to what degree was it? There's to, 100 degrees of...
Yeah, each one's to 100th of a degree, and these angles are repeated time after time, which means someone has got some real skill in how they mark this in, that they can get the same angle exact, because he measures each angle to 100th of a degree. So this is not just a combination of lines, there's real precision. And what's equally fascinating, between the first and third side, there are 6 lines, just small lines, and every one of them joins up with lines on the other 2 sides. There's real subtlety and precision in this, and it's 10, 20,000 years old. And the other rock is much older. This is a problem.
But then the 33 degrees pops up a lot, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And we're finding these angles on these rocks. They're finding a Blombos, they're finding a Calgary, they're finding a Lascaux. The same markings and the same angles that we're finding on these rocks are appearing around the world, which gets back to our belief that there was once a global, national, international language and civilizations that made this. Well, we can't do it today. There's stuff in here that we need 2,000 degrees Celsius, I'm told, to mark these rocks.
Wow. Well, let's leave that point and start moving along, because there's just so much we have to cover today. When we talk about the original Australians, when they talk about themselves and they go back in their history, they start talking about the dream time. And I know that a lot of their history is recalled from this dream time. So maybe to start, you can explain what the dream time is, and then we can kind of dig into some of the history.
Okay. There's 2 levels of the dream time. There's the spiritual and esoteric level, and there's the pragmatic, real, historical level to the dream time. So to put it in a simple term, the dreaming is a time where spirituality reigns supreme. Everything was beholding to the spiritual pursuits. So therefore, during that time of the dreaming, everything you did was in accord with the dreaming, who you spoke to. You couldn't speak to your mother-in-law directly because the dreaming made that a rule. Okay, it was like a religion, but it wasn't a religion. It was like how you live your life. It's where you walk. It's when you decide you're going to go on ceremony. Everything is prescribed. And the trick with this, and this is very important to understand, ladies and gentlemen, is that the dreaming has a very, very deep historical level to it. And if I can share this with you, the dreaming comes from the first ancestral spirits who came to this place and made the land and made the people. They believe the people of Australia were made here. Nowhere else. They are made here. And that the gods came down, and I'm going to use this word, and I'm going to use quotes here, came to earth, because this comes from the first language. It comes from some interpretations we got from a Professor Slater, who actually did an interpretation on this. And they make it very clear. They came to earth and made us. I'm going to be very specific about that because that's what it says. And if I can share this with you, Bayami is like the almighty creator. Now, Bayami came down in a ship and he cut off one of his legs. So when I want to find Bayami's footsteps, I find what are called Mandawi's, which is one footprint alone, because the second leg was cut off to make us. And that's the story of Adam's rib, but they got it wrong because it makes man and woman united. That's what they say there. And I'll go further than that. When we go to the dreaming, if you look at the feats of the very first gods, you'll find Bayami came down here to make people. His wife, Mulla Mulla, and it says in the dreaming there, was not born from here. She was born elsewhere, wasn't she, Evan?
That's right.
And came down for a small period of time and went back up.
But then there's the nameless one.
The son of Bayami is called the Nameless One, and he despaired of the earth. So what he did was he went off and found this massive tree, straight tree that mingled with the clouds, and he got inside that and it took off, and there was smoke and fire that came out from beneath. That's what's said in the dreaming, by the way, in these stories. And the Southern Cross marks out where he went to. So you will find within that, I just spoke to an elder yesterday. I said, don't forget to tell everyone we come from the Pleiades. So when you read the dreaming, you don't just get a chronicle of who you can talk to, how it's decided what your life is going to be. And if I can give you an example of that, for a young child, her or his life is mapped out when he or she finally walks. And when they walk on the ground and leave 3 footprints, all the elders stand around and decide the rest of that person's life with that interaction with the spirits of the land. So that is part of the whole of the life of an original person. They are locked into the dreaming as much as you are the air that you breathe. But it also gives them their history and their ancestry. So it's a double-edged thing. The only story that runs through the whole of the 500 tribes in Australia is called the 7 Sisters of Pleiades. So that is part of their story too. So it gives them a place that is their ancestry. Therefore, every sacred place will have a counterpart above. When our elders took us out on the country last time, Kano told us one thing to remember. If someone tells you of a sacred place and cannot find a place in the sky that relates to that, it's not sacred. So that's what the dreaming is. It brings together a way of living in this earth and contact with this earth and locks us into the place outside where we come from.
But when you talk about the Pleiades, the word left my mind. When you talk about the Pleiades, I mean, the one myth that I had heard, which I was flabbergasted with, was about, and please excuse the way I pronounce it, I was told I definitely don't pronounce it correctly, which is shocking to me, is the Wakari brothers and Kadili, and how he was coming down and trying to have relations with the women of the earth, and the Wakari brothers took their boomerang and castrated him, just like Kronos castrated Uranus, and then the women became the Pleiades. Is that the myth you're talking about?
Look, you go to each of the 500 tribes, you'll get variations on that myth, okay? It'll vary from time to time. Sometimes it's Orion that's chasing the sisters. Sometimes she catches one, but he doesn't. It varies. I've heard it in so many different places. But the general story of coming here and the Pleiades being where their ancestry comes from is constant. I know the one you're talking about, and we could give you 15 different variations on that.
I'm sure.
But because it's 500 different tribes, and you've got to remember, each tribe only has their own stories. They don't share any other story bar this one. This is the only story that breaks the mold of what happens elsewhere, because each tribe has their own land, their own spirits, and their own relationships. And I, of another tribe, could never walk on that land without permission. And if I did, I'd die. The spirits would kill me. That's what they knew. So therefore, this particular story is just symbolic of what the dreaming is really about. And I've got to be honest, when we wrote our first 3 books, we published through University Press of America, we didn't talk about this sort of stuff. And we told the elders we never would. Now we talk about it all the time because they don't give us a choice. And because we do get archaeology that screams to us ancient technology, ancient civilizations, and we're finding on the Standing Stones mound, when this gentleman, he was actually the president of the Australian Archaeological Society, when he did a translation, the phrase that was repeated more than any other, 3 of them, came to Earth from a light from afar and made humans, made them, brought a soul, made them with a rod, a divine rod, very clear. So if this is what they wrote and we're reporting their story, we don't have a choice. We just go with it.
But the story is consistent. I mean, that's kind of my thing, is taking myths and legends and stories and iconography from around the world and going, well, look, they're saying this, and these people are saying this, and these people are saying this, and everyone has the same story, which this has been my contention. This is why I love Australia and talking about Australia. If, using the model that they have out there, if Australia was populated some 60,000 years ago, what that says is that the myths that they have, that parallel mythology from around the world, has to be at least that old.
At least.
And most people say, oh, well, it's like 10,000 years old, 5,000 years old. And it's like, not if it's in America, not if it's in Australia.
No, it's much, much older than we even begin to understand. The elders have made that clear too. And the interesting part about this, Rita, is we talk about some people, mainly academics, look upon oral tradition and myths as something to dismiss. I want them to understand one thing. There was one continent until the invasion where it was illegal, immoral, and would induce death if you were to walk on another person's country. Now, what that means is, yes, the men fought. We do have ample amounts of testosterone and we can't help ourselves. We would fight on agreed neutral territory, and when the fight was over, we would go back to our land. What we would never do, and this has never happened in this country, is go onto another person's land and steal, rape, or pillage. Couldn't be done. Which means this is the only continent where the whole continent never had a situation where the invaders walked onto someone's land and then sanitized the history and changed it to suit their own conscience, which is riddled with guilt. This is the only country where the story that began on one piece of land, nobody's come to take it. No one's come to steal it. And I've been with traditional elders when they introduced a new word into their language, the Ramangeri. It took an hour of argument about how it should be said and where it should be placed. It was a huge event, and they all knew exactly how to say it. To memorize these words was considered an honor and a privilege, and this is how you were given your initiation. They never forgot. So what we have here, I believe, throw your pages away. They've been written by the victors and they've been edited and changed. What we have in Australia is a story that until the cook came was perfect. It hadn't been changed, because you've got to remember, in most languages, and Evan knows this too, what is the one word they don't have, Evan?
Oh, that lie.
Lie. There's no word for lying. So therefore, this is very important. You've got to understand that. Yes, I know us white fellas have brought that down to a cultured art. We can lie in so many different shades, and we can do it so well. For them, lying wasn't even possible, because the spirits see everything you do, so they would know. And if you did it, they'd punish you. So you must come and tell the truth straight away. That creates a different paradigm when you're passing on your history.
But, I mean, in a way, you can use that fact that there is no lying to actually date things. There's like panoramity with the saltwater crocodile.
Yeah, 75,000 years. Quite recently, they found a meteor crater to within 10 metres from a dreaming story. and found it, located it. And then they freaked out because they found out the crater hit 1.5 million years ago. And they said, oh, my God, well, how would they have known that? They must have guessed. And, of course, the elders got very upset because they've said this many times. We only tell you what we see and know. We knew it happened. And that creates some other problems. But this is the point here. We're dealing with a culture. And remember, some of the people we're talking to have managed to keep that. Yes, the whites have been in this country for 200-odd years, but some of them managed to keep these secrets and these stories alive, and they haven't been changed. So we are getting the wisdom of the ages here.
And I'm hoping as we move into contemporary times that they're being documented. I mean, one of the things that we see in so many cultures is that the children just want to become westernized and they don't want to participate in the old ways and they don't want to learn the old stories and learn. And it would just be such a shame that what knowledge they have just goes away.
Yeah, welcome to our world, and it's your world too. Yeah, the same problem exists here.
Yeah,
I'm not going to deny that. Evan and I looked at each other and nodded our head while you were saying that.
Yeah.
But I can tell you there are some younger ones coming through. I know of some where it is being passed on, and I know of a person who can play the yidaki, or people in America call it didgeridoo, that can basically lay down a whole audience. These people still exist. They're around. We know of elders who can do things of the old ways. They're still around. There's not many, but there are enough, and they've got the songs and they have the wisdom. Now, this first language we speak of that we're working on now, we brought an elder in from the middle who knew the language, actually knew the symbols, and actually sent me a diagram he made 5 years before we got the notes from Slater, who's the professor who worked on this site and worked out the sacred language. And he marked out 15 symbols, and they're all on the same page as Slater's, but I hadn't seen Slater's work for it. This guy knows the old language. So this stuff, these old ways are still around, and they are passing them on, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, Kono's passed on to others, so it's still getting spread along here. So we still have it. We have it in this country. It's still around.
There's still hope.
There still is some.
But that's good. Okay, moving along. So one of the things in your book is that you guys contend that the out of Africa theory of human evolution and the spread of humanity is incorrect, and the origin of man was actually in Australia. What led you guys to that conclusion?
Their science. Very simply, the amount of mitochondrial evidence, the amount of Y chromosome evidence, skull morphology that was done by scientists, their scientists, mainstream scientists. All we did was put it all together and put in a big picture. Evan found recently, because Evan goes and finds all this stuff for me, we found a study that was done by 2 Russian gentlemen, scientists, with all the right degrees, and they were studying Y chromosomes, which is what the men have. And what they did was, and they wrote in the start, the out of Africa theory is just a theory. In fact, we found it doesn't exist. And what they did to prove it was they've done the most extensive study of Y chromosomes anywhere. And they did an intensive study of 400 men, non-African, from all over the world. Not just Australia, everywhere. It's not just Australia, it's not part of Africa, believe me. And this is what they found. They compared it to 13 distinct African Y chromosome markers. So that's a possibility of 5,200 hits. And do you know how many hits they got? Not one. Not one. Now, if they all say Eve came out of Africa, well, ladies and gentlemen, if Eve did, and she didn't, I can tell you Adam didn't, because the Y chromosome says no African there. And they did up a tree, and they spent a lot of time on this tree. And there are 3 lines that come under African, and they're all in Africa. And there are 28 lines that come under some other group that they won't name. Well, that's the group we're interested in. But that's the Y chromosome, and as the scientists know, the Y chromosome being male is a bit willful and erratic. It's not as predictable and as reliable as the women's mitochondrial DNA, as you probably know, Dr. Rita. But even so, when we looked at mitochondrial DNA of the original people, and let's take the people who actually made the out of Africa theory, the ones who gave the evidence for it. That's Alan Wilson and Rebecca Cairn, both professors. They're the ones who said that she probably came out of Africa, and they're the ones who gave the name Eve. And they're the ones who both said, and this is very important because we got the proof, within 10 years we got it wrong. It was Australia. Now, Wilson came down here and did more research when he found out did some study and said, no, the original people around 400,000 years ago, you got this wrong. And they came from two lineages. So Wilson came down here and he got the vials of the blood of 31 full descent original people with no white genes in there to taint them, so to speak. And he got 22 different strands. Now, ladies and gentlemen, every time you get a new strand in the population, that represents 3,500 years. He's already up to 77,000 years, and he's running at a 70% mutation rate. That's the largest in the world. It's the largest in the world. And I can tell you one other study, because we could do thousands of them. The largest study done in Australia of 1,500 vials of blood was done by Roy Simmons from the Commonwealth Serum Laboratory. And I can tell you what he said. And 600 were full descent, not 31, 600. He made this statement. He said that the original genes have no relationship to the Africans, and they came about before the Africans. And we could spend the next half hour rattling off paper after paper after paper. And it's simple. It says the same every time. It just says what the original people said. They don't belong to the Africans. We believe it or not, we even have a dreaming story, don't we, Evan?
We do.
Ooh, tell.
And it's a dreaming story about the Africans trying to get here. And they say that's the land of lions and giraffes, don't they?
Yes.
But no matter what they did, they tried to trick them to come across, and they used their magic king from Africa. The original people would say, no, we have the lions here. No, you can't come. Time after time. And eventually, the elder from Australia, to trick the elder from Africa, because we didn't want the Africans, lied. Now, as I told you before, that's a mortal sin. He was turned into a frog for lying. They understood why he lied and appreciated it, but he still had to be punished. And he was turned into a frog. But his call, and they give us the call, and it says, we don't want those Africans here. That's what the call is. So it's that specific. They've even got a dreaming story. For any white fella that says the Africans here, we've got a dreaming story. No, never here. So that dreaming story is just part of that truth. Yes, Africa will have a relationship to Australia, but here's the trick. It'll be the original relationship that begins it, not the other way around. It comes from here first. And we've found this time after time. And what's interesting, the Y chromosome study done of just original people here. Now, there's 41 types of Y chromosomes, and they're spread all over fairly evenly, except in one place, Australia. 78% of all original people fall into two lines. And you know what they said? The Y chromosome said, there's two lineages here. Rebecca Cairns said there's two lineages here. Professor Alan Wilson said, Homo erectus got to Australia 500,000 years ago. Well, I've got an argument about that, but we'll let that go. Where's the second lineage? Where's the second one? And that's where it gets interesting, because what they're saying is there's two lineages. And I can tell you one other thing. The oldest Homo sapien found in Australia is Lake Mungo 3, the Mungo man. And they looked at his mitochondrial DNA, examined it, and not only did it not relate to Africa, it did not relate to any race on this planet, but it was a Homo sapien sapien. So we've got a big question here. We know they began here. I want to know what that second lineage is, because we don't know what it is, and it doesn't relate to anyone that's here now. Could it be Pleiadian? I don't know, but I can tell you one thing. The oldest Homo sapien found in Australia, possibly the world, is a Homo sapien sapien, and it's not even related to the original people of today. So there's stories here that really don't fit into what the rest of the mob have got elsewhere.
I find that really interesting that the oldest one was found there. It's right up there with finding, elongated skulls in Australia. There are only so many places that they're found, and Australia has some of the oldest ones.
Yeah.
I find that interesting. But question for you. People like Michael Tellinger claim that huge populations existed in Africa about 200,000 years ago. And listening to your story, could it have been, and this is just hypothetical, could it have been that there were two populations happening kind of parallel, one in Australia, one in Africa. I mean, if the gods came and created us, could they have tried to create us in more than one place on Earth?
We sat down personally and had that conversation with Michael. We're doing a series of tours with Michael in Australia later on in August this year. So, yeah, we're very close with each other. And Michael, we sat down and discussed just that. And you know what, Rita? What you said is exactly what we said.
Yeah, that's what we came up with.
We've come up with exactly the same. We're thinking the same thing. In fact, Michael is predisposed, and we've actually used one of his quotes where he thinks it might have started here first. He's actually said the original story might have begun in Australia first. We believe that everything Michael said is spot on, and we believe that's a Sirian input, and we believe what happened in Australia is a Pleiadian input. And we believe our genes now are a combination of the Pleiadian spiritual, esoteric walkabout where original people go and wander off for weeks on their own to find their spirituality, and the Sirian, work the minds, do what you're told, and obey. And I think what we have today, humans today, are a combination of those genes. And we believe exactly what you said, that what took place, Michael's right. What happened there happened there. And they were mining and they were working there. That's all right. What happened here was, and I want to use what an elder said here, what they created here was something for the Pleiadians to incarnate into, and I'm going to use the Gnostic quote from the Apocalypse of Adam.
Oh, yes.
And they found that we could be greater than the gods that created us. And I think that's where the Pleiadians were coming from, that Gnostic approach that we could be greater than the gods that created us, the best of both worlds, the Pleiadians and the humans together. And that's what they look for here, whereas in Africa, they didn't want to mine anymore and they wanted something more compliant, and they created that. So, yeah, we're both in agreement on that. And well done, Rita, because that's exactly, you answered the question because that's what we said, didn't you?
Well, and I'm going to throw in one more location into the mix. Peru, in the Nazca area, Paracas, Nazca. In my research, one of the things that I found, which I was flabbergasted by, that the oldest and largest ochre mines are in South Africa, Australia, and in Peru, in the Nazca region.
Yeah, look, you're right. They're in there too. That's the third group. And when we do talks later on in the year, we have someone from Peru representing that side, don't we, Evan?
Yeah.
So we are covering the three groups. So we're doing South Africa, Australia, and South America together in our talk. So we're trying to cover the whole of that story. But just spot on. There's a third group there. We have no doubt that the three groups are all interrelated. And there's a very strong contact between South America and Australia that goes a long, long way back. We have no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think the last Australian original kind of genetic population was still around to the early 2000s, late 90s, I think. Well, Terra de Fuego, they were the last two women, I think.
And the Euro were Aboriginal too. So the Americans had that contact for a long time. And you've got all those later race, and we do now know we've got original skulls. Waldenese has found 55 original skulls in South America. And I also know, because we spoke to the ambassador of Chile, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
That they teach in all of their schools in Chile that they could have come from Australia. And not one school in Australia teaches any of this stuff, so I don't know who's got the shame there. All praise to Chile. Yeah, very strong link. And I think those three countries are very much where I think humanity does begin, in different places at different times. But we suspect the Pleiadians may have been the first cab off the rank. And then, I don't know with South America which group that is. Is it Pleiadian too? I sort of feel like it is, but I don't know because I don't know enough and I can't speak on behalf of them. But definitely Sirian in Africa.
This is going to be kind of a weird question, but it might be a very good question. Is there in the indigenous culture a red-haired genetic character?
We got white hair and blue eyes. We've got every colour. Every colour. We saw pictures from a gentleman called Baldwin Spencer who went into the middle in about 1900. And there are kids there, and you wouldn't believe it, right in the centre where it's damn hot and warm and everything. The kids running around with blonde hair and blue eyes, and it's straight. They've got every type. This is what, when people first got here, they said there were three different groups of original people. They could not put them in as one. They called them Murrians, Carpentarians, and mainland. They thought the ones in Tasmania can't belong to Australia. They've got nothing to do with it. Everything's possible. You see, that's one of the things we said before about genetic diversity. You want to know where blonde hairs come from? It comes from here because I've seen it here. It's within this group here, all groups. The red-haired people, particularly, Rita, had a huge population in New Zealand, didn't they?
Yeah, so Grafton Elliott Smith found or was involved with finding red-headed mummies over in New Zealand.
There was a war between the Maoris and the red-haired people when they first got there, and the Maoris are now talking about it. It was a fairly ongoing war for quite some time. So, yes, the red-haired people were down here, and we've been told to, more than likely, red-haired people were living in Australia, and it may have not even been original red-haired people.
Well, I know that in Brian Forrester's work, he has found red-headed people as being the indigenous people in Easter Island, and there's redhead on the skulls in Peru. So I was just wondering, we have this Negroid character, if there was also this redheaded characteristic somewhere also.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. Well, I don't think it was the only part of the original group because every group was there. We had little ones there. All the little people come from there. We've got pictures of them still to this day. Lots of little people there. All races were there. But the redhead people, I've heard stories of them, dreaming stories and talk of them. Yeah, definitely they were part of that. As I said, they were part of New Zealand too. They were part of this story. And I don't know why they've gone. I know in New Zealand why they were gone because the Maoris are a pretty tough race to fight against. Just as simple as that. You've ever seen them play football? They're tough. So, I mean, they're harkers enough to scare the crap out of them and say, I'll give up anyway. But I can see what they got done there. I think in this case, they just disappeared through genes because they were around. They were spoken of.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Earlier you mentioned the Mungo Man being dated to, well, I said 60,000 years ago. Have other Homo sapiens or other artifacts been discovered that are from that time period or predate it?
Yeah, there's an interesting one. There are 10 sites that predate it. Okay, there are 10. There's a site of 186,000 years of Great Barrier Reef where they're looking at charcoal deposits. There's another one of 126,000 years in Lake George, which had a tenfold increase of charcoal from about 126,000 years. It was always when the lake was wet. There's a skull cap in Lake Eyre, 135. Jiminum, 110. Look, there's plenty of them. The problem is there are at least 10, but what you get is with some of them, not all, there'll automatically be someone who writes up a paper to say, I dispute that. And the best example of that is Jiminum, where Dr. Richard Filliger wrote a paper saying, I think we've got evidence here of tools at 176,000 years and we've got evidence of art that's 120. And then what he then did was co-wrote a paper that wrote against his paper. And then he made a public statement and says, I'm still sticking to my guns, I'm not sure. So we're very quick to back off the controversial side in Australia and get on the other mob when they're saying that. And the beautiful part about Jiminum is the group that just argued the date. They said that the testing was right. You got 176, we understand that. But the grains you tested, before they were tested, they received insufficient sunlight. Therefore, that's why there wasn't sunlight there. And I'm thinking, well, how would you know how much sunlight the grains got unless you were there? It was ridiculous. But that's what they all backed up. But there are some. There's like 175,000 years for an engraved crocodile of Panoramity, which we know there were no saltwater crocodiles there. That's in Lake Eyre until 80,000 years ago. That one no one's argued against. The one of 126 they haven't argued against. And there is also a fascinating one, which is a skull at Lake Mungo, which is probably about 5,000 years, about 55,000 years. Now, the Lake Mungo one is gracile. This one's robust. Lake Mungo has a temple bone of 3 mils. This one's got a temple bone of 18 mils. Lake Mungo has got a cranium capacity of 1,300 cc's. This one is 1,540 cc. If I was to hit this particular gentleman in the head with a continuous torus, which is an eyebrow ridge that goes all the way across, I'd just break my knuckles. This thing is massive. And they're nearly the same date. They were buried near one another. Now, if
so are we talking giant or are we talking something more like a Homo erectus type?
No,
skull?
Homo sapien. They've named it Homo sapien sapien. They don't know what it is. It's robust as anything, right? It's not a Neanderthal. It's not a Denisovan. You see, these guys making up these stories about our past history are making up as they go along. They find a new hominid every second day. But this particular one they call a robust Homo sapiens sapien. But if the Africans came here, give me a break, they wouldn't get on the boat with this bloke. He looks so different. If it was in the movie theatre, everyone would walk out, scare the crowd. He's got a receding forehead that goes back at nearly 45 degrees. Ours is about 90. And it goes up like the elongated skull, doesn't it? Very much like that. But it's so thick. The skull is so thick. And he was living there from 50,000 to 6,000 years. So when people try and talk about this smooth talk about different hominids, this thing was still living with Homo sapiens 6,000 years ago and had a bigger brain capacity, and its elbow was 50% wider. It was a massive piece of work and smarter. And I got a question, why did it become extinct? Because my take is, if you're bigger and if you're stronger and you're smarter, how come the gracile one lived on? There are so many questions in Australia that don't fit in.
Yeah, I don't know.
Nor do we. Yeah. Oh, we asked the original people, and they've spoken about these other people. They've spoken about them. They talk about them. They say they were 7.5 foot, don't they? They say they were big ones. Yeah. But they're not the Yowies. They're not those ones. We've got them too. They're a different mob, and they're bigger again. But that's all part of what was going on here. There were all sorts of hominids running all over the world. And then one group, the Homo sapiens sapiens, the reason they went forward is somebody, and we know where they come from, different mobs came down and said, right, what are we going to choose from this mix? Denisovians, red deer, cavemen, Homo, Enigma. They had all sorts to pick from. And I like Doctor Who's take on this. He said, I always thought the Neanderthals, the poets, would have been the ones that got through, but no, the cranky apes did. And they chose us.
I mean, something that I've put out was that, the flood didn't just take out, it wasn't to wipe out humanity, it was to wipe out the miscellaneous extraneous forms of humanity, and only Homo sapiens sapiens survived because they were told.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that, because we've got, you've got the Homo habilis that was there. I'm sorry, yeah, not habilis, the Florensis, the Hobbit, died out around 12,000 years ago. Denisovans died out around 12,000 years ago. Red Deer caveman died out around that time. I reckon when the flood took place, we wiped them out. And there may have been a few left behind, but their genetic pool would have been so knocked up. We might have a few still running around in small little spots in the forest and stuff, but we managed to get through that when all the other species didn't. And maybe we've got to thank our extraterrestrial genes for getting through that. And I think that's what we got through there. That's the reason why, because they put a lot of work into this, didn't they? They didn't want to leave us at all.
Well, they warned us. They, in Australia, let me put it back on you. In Australia, do they have a flood myth similar to a Noah-type myth?
Oh, the same one, yeah.
A fellow went from island to island picking up any blackfella he could in a great canoe. In a great canoe.
They call it a great canoe, and he went from island to island picking up any blackfella that had survived. Oh, yeah, it's everywhere. And these people who just miss this.
And something just come through the other day, I think a day or two ago, about them discovering scientific signs of the tsunami that hit us. Oh, yeah. And it's in the dreaming stories.
Yeah, yeah.
So talk about
it is in their dreaming stories. Look, they're ignoring them again. The original people left this for us, and we ignore it, but we shouldn't. Yes, definitely. It took place everywhere. We all got knocked. Everyone got knocked around at that time, and you're spot on, Rita. That's what happened. All those other hominids were running around. There is a damn good chance the Denisovans were speaking. A very good chance they were, and some of the other ones too. They're saying the Red Deer caveman was speaking too. Well, then what makes them different from us? The answer is that. Exactly, and I've seen pictures of Denisovans, and I put it up, and we put it up in presentations. I said to people, if this person walked down the street, what would you say? And they all said, "G'day." They just say, "How are you?" and keep walking. So, I think we're really having ourselves on. We were just lucky because we had some people looked after us, guardian angels, but yeah. They had wings.
Palladian guardian angels.
It's the whole business. And because the Syrians were looking after their investment too. I mean, they spent time and effort. They all did. They were all playing around. There was other mobs too making it too. Too much time and effort in the laboratory to let that fall. But the poor old Red Deer caveman, well, they didn't work with him. They thought, well, Collateral damage, eh? It went under.
But it also depends on where the populations were. If there was this big animosity between the original people of Australia and Africa, and all the African people went, bye-bye, which would be evident from all the people that are missing from South Africa based on the terracing down there. Anyway, we're going to be going to break here in like 2 minutes. They just sent me a little note. Let me ask you this question, and hopefully you can answer quickly. How did you guys get access to the original stories? I mean, obviously you're not Aboriginal, you're not from that genetic line. How did you manage to get close to them enough that they would share their history with you?
Through the kids. See, I was a teacher first, right? And what I was doing is I helped set up the AB Studies course in New South Wales. And I spent some time working with Aboriginal kids in areas where there are a lot of Aboriginal kids. And because they trusted me, they would tell their parents. And then their parents thought, well, if you're looking after our kids, then you get an extra tick. As opposed to a geologist or an archaeologist who comes on site and says, I want to look at the rocks. Well, what right have they got to go in the country? They hadn't earned their dues. So because I was a teacher and because I spent a lot of time working with Aboriginal education, when we started doing this archaeology, they knew of us. They knew what we did, and we could go back to Maury, another place we taught, and they go and check. And because we had character references as people that could be trusted, because they didn't trust mainstream people, that meant because we weren't belonging to a university or a business or a government, and because we'd proved our worth by working with their kids, because that's more important to them, their future is their children, and because we were trying to teach their culture in the schools, then walking into these places become progressively easier. You see, when we went down to South Australia and I got ceremony, I was called down by them. They found out what we did. So the best way to do this is not to say things, but to do it. So by looking after the original kids and educating them well, the adults understood where we're coming from, and we won their trust. Once that happens, it becomes easy. They'll tell you everything. They want to share. They want to share.
Well, we need to go to break, so can you hold that till we come back?
No worries.
Okay, we're going to go to break. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're here talking to Steve and Evan Strong about their book, Shunned, The Hidden History of the Original Aborigines. And their website is forgottenorigin.com, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.
You're listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
Are you looking for a cure for boredom? Never worry. IRN's new interactive website introduces a number of ways to pass time while you listen to your favorite show. Choose anything from the IRN chat lounge, the game lounge, the video lounge, or the mood lounge. These fun, exciting features let you chat in real time with fellow listeners, view live skywatches, play daily posted online games, or pick a show based on topic. The choices are endless. Use your time wisely, keeping it all on IRN.
Who were the gods of antiquity? They've been described as the forces of nature, levels of consciousness, and aspects of our psyche. Stories that depict their incredible weapons, their flying machines, and their amazing adventures are characterized as being the product of our ancestors' fanciful imaginations. But what if the tales of the gods are true? Did the writers, chroniclers, and scribes of our distant past actually document a realistic view of our origin? My latest book, Man-Made, The Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, looks at our most ancient legends. Learn of the torrid romances, elaborate plots, violent scandals, and conspiracies that played out in antiquity. Find out the role the gods played in the life and culture we have today. If you want to find out the truth of who we are and where we come from, order your copy of Man-Made today. For more information, go to www.manmadethechronicles.com. That's www.manmadethechronicles.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free.
Move past the crossroads in your life and discover alternative solutions to your deepest concerns at soulhealer.com. So whether it's a physical problem, an emotional issue, a question about work, or troubles in your relationships, naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise can help you. Bring peace, harmony, and health back into your life. Schedule a session today. Visit soulhealer.com right away and live the life you've been dreaming of.
You didn't forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
We only have a couple of seconds before we have to get back to the show, and I want to tell you how you can jumpstart your intuition today. Using my free 50-page introductory guide filled with simple, revolutionary, and proven techniques, you can ignite your intuition and tap into your inner wisdom, all from the comfort of your own home. The Institute of Applied Energetics is the leader in online home study instruction for those interested in becoming a certified medical intuitive, intuitive counselor, or energy medicine practitioner. Now is the time to transform your life and take it to a completely new level. Discover who you are and how you work. Open the door to the world of intuition, health, and healing. You can jumpstart your intuition right away by going to www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and downloading our free guide. Get the opportunity of a lifetime and live the life you deserve. Download your free Jumpstart Your Intuition guide today at www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and begin living a life filled with passion and purpose.
Computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Go deep inside yourself and venture into the realm of the unconscious mind with my Meditating on the Kabbalah guided imagery audio CDs. Discover who you are and what you want in life. Meditating on the Kabbalah can help you to open, clear, and revitalize the energetic pathways of your subtle being. They will support you in your spiritual quest by helping you to access the profound insights and inner guidance you need as you work in alignment with your highest good. Let them help you to release negative thoughts and emotions and clear away any limitations that may be keeping you from experiencing your full potential. Walk down the path to health, healing, understanding, and enlightenment with Meditating on the Kabbalah. Order your copy today at www.soulhealer.com. That's right, that's www.soulhealer.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network. Would you like your favorite show to be played again live on air? Well, now the choice is in your hands with IRN's live request portal, an easy way to request your favorite show with a simple click. IRN's live request portal now gives you exclusive access to all the shows. How easy is it? Simply type a show name or a guest name, click request, even write a dedication message, and that's it. Try it now. Simply visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com, click on the live request tab under the show menu. Now playing your favorite show is just a mouse click away.
Okay. Oh, hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading their free 50-page guide. It's also brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer. So give me a call, send me an email. Let's set up a time for a one-on-one. Mono. Okay, we've been here talking with Stephen and Evan Strong about their book, Shunned, The Hidden History of the Original Australians. Their website is forgottenorigin.com. Stephen, do you remember what you were thinking about before we went to break, or should I just move on to the next topic?
I'm 62.
Yeah, move on to the next topic.
We're moving along. Sometimes I actually will take a note during an interview so I can remember what I was talking about. And then sometimes I even remember what the note meant that I wrote down.
Oh, don't show off. I've got 4 short-term memory cells left, and I guard them jealously. They're all I've got left going.
Okay. Australia, obviously, I mean, it's a continent, but it's an island continent. I guess all continents are islands. But to get from there to anywhere else, like New Zealand or Polynesia or anywhere, you have to go somehow. So how did they get around? I mean, we don't have transporters. They might have had transporters. But how did they get off of Australia to populate other parts of the world?
Well, the trick is here, let's go back to let's always start with mainstream, and then we go straight to the elders. Mainstream tells us the first time that humans sailed to another continent was from Africa when they made their way to Australia. That's the first time that happened, around 60,000 years ago. That's what they tell us. The problem is, if you want to do the archaeology, the only evidence in the world for large boats sailing a long distance is found. But guess where it's found? In Australia. Not outside Australia, but in Australia. A gentleman by the name of Graham Walsh found 2 paintings, and those paintings were of a boat, 2 ocean-going boats. One of them had 29 people seated in the boat and the other 23. Well, that's not a fishing expedition. It's not a sailing down the river. This is meant to depict. And now here's the interesting part. The actual paintings were dated between 17 to 50,000 years, but Walsh went on to say he thought it was very much closer to the 50,000 years. So if you want to see the first pictures of people in boats moving somewhere, you've got them. And everyone knows where they are. They're in Australia. And, of course, we all forget that. What Walsh then said was, a mysterious race must have come to Australia for a while, then left. And did all these paintings and everything and just left. And we don't know who they are because they never mentioned where they came from. They didn't do it anywhere else. But that's the way around it, because we couldn't have our Aboriginal people sailing boats like that, could we?
Oh, God.
Oh, no, that wouldn't be right. That wouldn't be right. That's not right at all. But we also know that within this country they were doing astronomy 30, 40,000 years ago. They had all the skills. But I do want to add something to that. The boat journeys we can prove. We can prove the genetics of them reaching other places. But I want to share with you, when I was given ceremony by the Ramangeri, the elder who was the keeper of the old secrets came up to me and he said, you know about, and there's a story. We first went down there because they told us about a story of Southern law where they circumnavigated the world in a figure 8. They told us that. That was one of the reasons I first went down. And he said, how did you think we did it? Well, I said, well, boat. She says, that's one way. What about the other ways? Okay, and of course that's been one of the things we've been chasing, Rita. What are the other ways? He made it very clear, and I said, I said at the time, well, the other ways you're talking about, I know what you were hinting at. He's hinting at some sort of spacecraft and stuff like that. And I said, but I'd never talk about that, and he laughed at me and said, you will one day. So yeah, there is there's a common story there, isn't there, Evan?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
In Australia, do they have any stories of flying chariots like we see with Zeus and Thor and all of these other gods around, or flying discs or feathered serpents flying through the air, anything like that?
Yeah. Life in a bag, being brought here, being brought from afar. In fact, we can go further. We've got what Klaus Duna claims is the largest engraving of a UFO in the world, and that's at Carryong, and it's within about 2 kilometres of where the Carryong glyphs are, and it measures 4 metres by 2 metres. It's got 5 arms coming down off it, 5 legs, and it's a capsule, the normal sort of half semicircle on top with 5 arms pointing down. And it's exactly the same configuration of what was called the UFO glyphs. Everyone publicly calls them the UFO glyphs that were found in Carryong. In fact, one of them is mathematically exactly the same proportions down to within 1 centimetre. So yes, we do have engravings of UFOs. We have stories of them. Yeah, that's all there. We also know of a site. Oh, look, every, without exception, every sky hero in the Gosford region has no neck. None. And I asked the elder before she passed on, one of our bosses, Arnie Bev. I said to Arnie Bev, they've all got helmets on. There's no neck. None of them have got a neck. I've seen plenty of places where they've done necks. Why have they not done a neck? She said, well, our old story is they're all wearing hats. Now, in old ways, original, there's no word for helmet. What's the closest you pick? A hat. And we know of one story that's been told us by another elder who's going to take us to a place where I'm going to see, as he puts it, an astronaut, where on one picture you've got the full thing, then he takes his helmet off, his gloves off on another one, and his shoes off, and you see him one by one getting disrobed. So, yes, definitely, we have many stories of that.
One of the things that I believe is that when you start looking at glyphs and looking at that imagery, there is an entire story that's associated with the image. So, for example, when we think of an old man with a white beard and he has a red hat with white fur around the edge and a red suit with a big black belt, we all know who that is. I mean, I'm hoping you know who that is in Australia. We all know who he is here. And we know the entire story, and we know what he does and when he comes out, and, how he travels around the world, and an entire narrative. Do you find the same thing there? And are the narratives remembered by the elders?
That's a great call. That's exactly what happens. You'll go to a sacred engraving, and that engraving, you'll look at that, and the white fella says, okay, that's a figure. The black fella says, okay, that's the beginning of a story and a narrative. And now we'll do the songs that go with this particular thing. Then we'll learn the 3 or 4 stories, and the kids will learn the simplest story. Then further on, a bit more will be added. You go step by step. You see, original people had a writing, and believe it or not, and this is according to Slater, and we've got one, they had a language and an alphabet of 16 letters, including letter A, which we have, a letter A that's been engraved. They had all that. But you've got to remember, when we went to Standing Stone site, we took one shaped stone there, and Evan was there too. And an elder from the middle placed that shaped stone that came from there and put it in there, and the girl told us 7 different stories. How many did we see? Not one. But each of those reminded him of something else. And then we started to see, oh, yes, it is pointing to that. Oh, it is doing that. It does mark out that. But for us, at first glimpse, all we see is what we see. For the original people, their writing and their iconography is the beginning of all the things you remember. You see, a messenger that would learn, an original messenger, would have to know the language of every other tribe that he had to be in contact with, and that could be 10 languages. And then they have a secret language, which is the one we're working on. Then they have a second language. These people were absolute linguists of the highest order, and to learn so many languages, You can't be stupid. You've got to be smart. So they had all this going. It was a very complex society.
With their letters, do you find that there are parallels to what Laird has been working on with the Dogon, where even the letters have intrinsic meaning?
Oh, definitely. Look, Laird, Evan and I and Laird, we wrote 3 articles together on the carry-on glyphs about the carryover. And my take is that nobody has read it properly because they haven't factored in Laird's reading. And I still say that. I know we're working with Egyptologists who say something else. But we see seminal Dogon symbols in the carry-on walls that are an important part of the narrative. The one that says DNA double helix, there's a combination of 4 of those on the first wall, we believe is the ancient wall, one after the other. And each one grows. It starts off with just a symbol for DNA double helix. Then there's 2 hands, aren't there, Evan? Then there's 2 hands holding pyramids. Now, for me, Laird's part of this. He's looking for the ancient first language with the symbols of that. He's on the right track. And we believe what we're seeing here is some are parts of that too. No doubt that a lot of what he's talking about is right. And I feel like when we look at Egyptian hieroglyphs, we've got to look at the Dogon glyphs before them. And then you start to get a better feel, which is what Laird does. So his work on the carry-on glyphs has been brilliant. And he's led us into an area we're very comfortable with. We think there's a lot of scientific statements being made on that wall. And also people from afar have been made on that wall too, amongst all the UFO glyphs.
Is that written language still used by the original people, or was it let go? I guess where I'm coming from is Westerners came to Australia and they basically saw nothing. They said they had no language. They had no monumental building, which, okay, I agree with that. Yeah, but they said that they had no written language. But you're saying that there was a written language. Was it a hidden written language? Was it a written language that wasn't really used, or was it more ritual in nature?
Well, here's the trick. I can answer you directly because I'm actually writing about it in an article right now called First Language. And the story is this, that this language we're talking about, which is the first language on the planet, the guy that was working on it was the president, picked by his peers in Australia as the president of the Australian Archaeological Society, and we have his notes. He makes it very clear this particular language is unlike any other language because it's a combination of mass, of English, of rock arrangements, of rock markings, and of an alphabet, which is what we're leading up to.
Signs.
And hand signs, body signs, there's about 196 components. He had compiled 28,000 words from this language so far. Now, the trick was it had 16 letters, and we've got one in front of us. We've written about the letter A. Now, the first language is very much, according to Slater, vowels. It's based on long vowels with a few consonants in between. Now, he got this language from Wollombi, which is where the carry-on glyphs are and the other stuff. He got it from a lady. I found that nearly all the sacred stuff in Australia was given to women, not men. And her name was Mrs. David Dunlop, and her husband was the first magistrate about way back. She got that and was given and told how they used to speak it and how to read it. And then he got a hold of it, and then he's been working with it ever since. But according to this, they were writing. I know this was a shock, and I was a bit surprised when I first saw it. But lo and behold, I'm looking at the letter A carved in one of the hardest rocks on this planet, and it looks exactly like an A. And he mentioned the letters that were used and weren't used, and he nominated them. And I can give you a quote that comes directly from his notes I've got here now, and it gives you a feel where it's coming from. And this is what he wrote in his handwritten notes. He's writing to his colleague that was working on this site. He said this: the language which we speak is not Anglo-Saxon, but just Aboriginal, the same as all of the languages. And then he goes on further to tell us that the language, have you heard of Pythagoras? And I'm not being sarcastic, we have, but what he claims here, Pythagoras got his multiplication table from the original people.
He goes on to say that Moses was taught his original theological philosophy from the blackfellas. He claims all of that came from here. And what he's saying is, and I know it's a shock, that our idea of writing letters to represent our language is original. So what we're doing is passing on the work of the top academic of his time. I can tell you, Dr. Rita, that Frederick Slater was one of the top academics in 1937, 1938, 1939. After that, he disappears from every public record. In fact, you cannot find a picture about this man. You cannot find a paper about this man. You cannot find one academic record. He was expunged from the whole of Australian history for his sin of telling the truth.
I don't find that surprising. One of the things that I have seen is that, and I don't know why it keeps coming back to that 1940 date, that after 1940, it seems like people that were writing about what they saw and what they experienced all went away.
Well, you know, you're so right about that. Can I share something with you?
Sure.
He wrote about, in 1937, didn't he, Evan, to the Australian Science Congress, and it's in the paper. This is the only time we got any recording was to go back to the newspapers because they didn't take that out. And it said there how pleased he was about how well received his theory and his talks were about by army coming to Earth in 1937. And he was then in all the papers, wasn't he? Everywhere. And they were talking about this stuff, about Egyptians. In fact, they were saying about Egyptians, there is so much evidence of Egyptians in Australia that they can't believe it. And they were all saying, this is the case, this is true. But I find it interesting you said 1940, because honestly, in 1939, we found his last paper.
Yeah.
It was written by Goddard and Slater. That's how it got through. And it was stamped cancelled by the Sydney University Department of Tropical Diseases and Medicine. They cancelled his paper, and that was it. Past that point, he is no longer. We think he lived past the Second World War, don't we?
Yeah, really.
But we can't even we got one of the best researchers in the country trying to find out what happened to him. And for all intents and purposes, he was picked up by a Pleiadian spaceship in 1939, or the government. I mean, honestly, the poor man, you can imagine, he was the president in 1939 of the Australian Archaeological Society, and from that point on, he's nothing, nobody. And when you read that story, you think, what is going on here? This is appalling. We have actually put a picture of Evan in, haven't we, Evan?
Yeah.
As what Slater might have looked like. And he's got sunglasses on. My wife painted him once. We said, this is what he could have looked like if he wore sunglasses and he was around today. On another occasion, I did a stick man and said, this is Slater, because there is nothing. We found 25 pictures of the guy that co-wrote that paper with him, Goddard. We got him everywhere, haven't we? They named a room in a museum after Goddard. Nobody named anything after Slater, did they?
No, they didn't.
He broke the rules. But you know what the beauty of now? We've got the internet. Otherwise, it'd be the same. You'd have nowhere to go. It'd be the same. We can't get in a paper in this country, can we, Evan? Can't do it. We'd be going through exactly the same as him, trying to get his legacy back up. No one would cover us. And we've tried. We've been on the ABC and taken off. We've been jammed whenever we go on commercial stations. It's only through the internet, stuff like this. But this stuff, what he's done, stays alive. It'll be forgotten, which is what they want.
Thank God. Thank God. I mean, that was one of my reasons of asking whether, the stories and the traditions were being documented. You mentioned magic, and to me, that is a very experiential thing. And so when the people that understand how to make it work and how to do it go away, then it will be lost unless it gets rediscovered at some point in time. It's not something you can write down. It's something that you have to learn hands-on. So
you do. And it's a funny sort of setup with the magic, original magic. And I'll give you another example of our Elder Kano. On one occasion only, we didn't go into this country and smoke ourselves, which is very important in Australia, but we did other ceremony. Kano was 3,000 kilometres away, had no idea where we were. That night he rang me up. He said to me, you've been on country today, haven't you? I said, yes. He said, you didn't smoke yourself, did you? I thought, oh, God, is there nothing this man doesn't know? I said, no. He said, I've got a red kangaroo in front of me telling me everything you've done. Now, when we got to that site, a brown owl flew out, didn't it, Evan?
And
left a feather behind. The brown owl went and told another animal, and within 8 hours, 3,000 k's away, and Kangaroo Island is 30 kilometres off the coast, Kana knew about what I hadn't done right. So work that one out. That's proper magic. And it works with the animals. Here's the trick here, ladies and gentlemen. To get this magic right, you got to get back to the land, and you got to get back to those animals that are part of it, because they passed it on around here. The original people will tell you. The birds are messengers and pass on things. And I've seen original people standing there talking to birds, getting those messages. So, yeah, it's around. And as you said, when we do our archaeology, even when we do presentations, we throw in this stuff amongst all our science. We tell them, you want to hear the original story, you've got to hear about this part. You've got to hear about the mystical part, because it's part of what they talk about. It's an important part. In fact, it's the most important part.
Exactly. I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. So we talked a little bit about how the original Australians were, I'm going to say, a seafaring race. So I'm going to throw this out as a two-part question, because I think you can cover both. Kind of what was the extent of their travels? And then kind of part two, were there other cultures that actually came to Australia?
Oh, well, if we've got 3 hours, we'll go make this very quick.
Okay.
Well, that's why I was like, if I put it in one question, maybe it'll condense the answer just a little bit.
Okay, seafaring country, I told you about the boats. I can also tell you when we went to Gosford, we found a map, this beautiful design for a seafaring boat with a high brow and a high stern. And then we found a diagram up at East Alligator, 3,000 kilometres away. And we put the two maps, the two designs, the two boats next to one another, and the angles were perfectly the same. So what we learned from that, and what we knew from the other things, is they've been doing this for a long time. They've gone to the whole of the Pacific Rim, from Africa to Egypt to, let me give you a practical example for those who doubt this, to India. And quite recently, 2 years ago, Dr. Rao did a mitochondrial study for the Indian government. And what they did was they went out into the bush people, the people in the islands that were keeping away from the Indians, that had not much to do with them, and sampled their DNA. And what they found was they found 6 people that were not Indian. Their mitochondrial DNA had an Australian original signature only. So those people, for all intents and purposes, are still purely original people. We put up pictures of people from India, and you swear to them they're original people. The oldest Homo sapien found in Asia, in Perak in Malaysia, is not Asian. Guess what he is? He's Australian, original person.
And that's the Ainu.
The Ainu, before when the Chinese came across 3,000 years in Japan, we've got pictures. We've got a picture taken in 1890 of a last traditional Ainu man, and he looks exactly like an original man with the black curly hair and the broad nose and the wide face. He's so un-Asian and so original. Sylvia Gonzalez in America, Professor Sylvia Gonzalez, is adamant the original people were in America at least 40,000 years ago, and we believe it was much further back. All around, they sailed the whole Pacific Ocean. As we said earlier, Dr. Walter Reeves has 55 original skulls found in South America. There's nowhere they didn't go. Now, they've been seafaring for so far back that I can't really get my eldest to tell me how far back. I'm thinking the whole of the Pacific. That's why it's so important we get Michael. And the other person who's talking with us in that group is a gentleman you might have heard of called Brian Forster, who's coming down for these talks in August too. So we're covering the whole of it.
I want to come.
So what we're doing is we're covering the whole of the span that they sailed at. We have no reason to believe that they went to the Atlantic Ocean. We've not been told that, although I must make the point, according to the elders, they circumnavigated the world in a figure eight, so they were aware of it. But I think that they were focused in on that Pacific Rim. That seemed to be the area they were most focused in. And I'm not saying they didn't go to the other side, because to circumnavigate the world in a figure eight, and fascinatingly enough, if you look at it very carefully and study the currents, to circumnavigate the world, that's exactly what you would do. which again, one just how in the hell did they know that? The same way they knew about plate tectonics. But that goes way back from the elders. It's been happening for a long time. So they are seafaring people. But I can tell you that tradition stopped about 8,000 years ago, and we know why it stopped. Because the world walked away from the dreaming and started to accumulate money, possession, farming, owning of land, and all the things that went about against the dreaming. So from that period around 5,000, 6,000 years ago, there was no point sailing out anymore because the link was lost. And what then happens is we have the Egyptians, the Phoenicians, the Spanish, the Portuguese. Yes, I'm going to say the next one because we know there's a relic for this, the Vikings. They all came down here. I believe, and we all believe, the Egyptians came down here in reverence to meet their masters and to continue that tradition of learning from the great wisdoms and the great wise seers of the world. And if I can, I'd like to read a quote to you that gives an idea why the Egyptians came. And this was a summation that Slater made about what was going on here on the standing stone site. He says, their philosophy and formulated the basis of all knowledge in the beginning, now and to come. He believed the original people had that. That's what they were coming for. And that's why they kept coming. We do know the Egyptian people were here from 4,700 years to 400 years ago. We know why they were thrown out of the country, what laws they broke, and we even know where the Egyptian elders were killed, at Balmoral in Sydney. And they were told 400 years ago not to come back. We know of a treaty with the Spanish. The English don't have one. We have a problem there anyway. That's a big problem, but we won't do that today. We know they're all here. The Phoenicians at least for 1,000 years. All were given rights of passage to stay. But remember, none came as conquerors. And believe it or not, not even the Spanish, although they didn't last long, did they? Haven't they got wiped out? There were reasons for that because the Spanish and the Portuguese couldn't help themselves. They got back into their old habits. But we know the Egyptians, it was peaceful, it was cooperative, and it was very spiritual. And that was a long period. So, yes, they all came here. This place was the centre of the old world for quite some time. And then it stopped. It stopped. And then slowly but surely, all of the groups came for a while and were told to leave. And then the last of the groups to come were the British. And when they were asked to leave, they didn't. And it's been a bit...
And here we are today.
It's been a bit dire for the original people ever since, because every other time they left when they were asked to. Because the British didn't recognise what every other group did recognise. These were their betters. Yes, they were naked. Yes, they didn't have buildings. No, they didn't have books. But what they had was magic. And everybody needs a bit of magic.
Well, one of the things that we've talked about a couple of times is, the culture and the customs and the need to follow rules and, I don't want to say procedures.
Protocol.
And the way that it seems as if what they developed was for a very advanced culture and to have a very controlled society. Don't you see that all right, hang on one second. I have to flip the page of my notes. When you look at the rules and, I like to use the word taboos because, there's taboos in everything. Have you noticed that there is a similarity between what they live by and the customs, taboos, and procedures that are followed around the world?
Oh, undeniably. And I'm going to make a point that we're very aware of the fact that probably the closest relationship to the original people are the indigenous people of America. There's a very strong relationship there, particularly, as you said, in the taboos and customs about what you could and couldn't do. I'm particularly reminded by the Hopi religion and the Hopi beliefs, and I keep thinking, oh, God, is there a difference? And remember, I do believe that there was look, the way we read it in Australia, there have been rises in technology of amazing civilizations that have come and fallen. And we wouldn't be surprised if the original people played that game for a while and then said, throw it all away and throw the clothes away and the whole thing. But we do think that, yeah, look, that tradition of the dreaming goes everywhere. The relationship towards the land, towards the animals, the way they treat the women. And this is very important. You've got to remember, in original society, and I know it's the case in proper indigenous societies, the women are considered more important than the men. In fact, the elders would always ask me when we go to a new place, who's more important? I think, oh, such an easy question. Of course, the women are. And then we can go forward. And it's also important to understand that women's magic is more powerful than men's magic. Now, what happened is, while indigenous cultures keep that tradition, they keep the dreaming. It really is important. The dreaming's got a lot of rules to them, but the two most important ones is the women are slightly more important, and all animals and all creations are equally important with the men. The men really sit on the bottom of the pyramid, not the top. So this is very important. And, yeah, it's still existing today, but this is where the Judaism sort of tradition that we've got, where all those groups, when it comes back to Asherah, there was a time, I think about 620, wasn't it?
Yes.
The Zodiac religion, when Asherah was being revered more than Jehovah. And more people were worshipping Asherah, but she was the tree. They were worshipping the tree. And they therefore wrote her out of the whole of that religion. When they did that, all of those religions lost all their contact with the dreaming. And once a religion loses its contact with the first religion, it's dead. Well, I shouldn't say that. I just pronounced all the, oh dear.
Oh, God.
Oh, sorry. Well, I'm sorry, but that's how I'm doing this from a traditional viewpoint, and that's how we do things. That's how I see it. I see it from the dreaming. You must have the women as the focal point of your religion. You see, the original people tell us this: the women create, men destroy. And that's why women, some people think it's sexist in Australia. The women weren't allowed to touch the spears with the blades and the points. Now, they went out and hunted animals, don't worry about that. But they wanted to keep it clean. The women create, men destroy, and they know which is better. The men were always second-rate in that respect. You see, in a lot of societies and tribal groups there, when a woman falls pregnant, it has nothing to do with the man. He may supply the sperm, but the spirits in the woman will determine when it's going to happen. And I've seen this beautiful ceremony where the man doesn't see a child for a week, and finally the grandmother brings it in. The man lays on the ground, and they lay the child on top of the chest. And he sits there for about a minute, then it's taken away. Doesn't see it for another couple more days because he's not really part of the creative process. So that is right. You're right about that indigenous blessing that we've lost. But again, it first came out of the dreaming, because if you look at the very first dreaming stories, even the dreaming story called First Man, First Woman, which is what Adam and Eve came out of, ladies and gentlemen, it was the woman who had the insight, and it was a woman who realised she could create, not the man. And it was a woman who was led by the gods in the form of a serpent. See how we get those stories mixed up? This is where the original stories come from. You see, they come from here. And then they take Adam's rib, which is Biami's leg, and then say the man gets it first. No. It's man and woman united. And their words have come from that thing there. So again, that indigenous understanding of the role of women. And I can tell you now, the men and women are telling us there's a big change ahead in our place. Their ways are going to come back, but they've all told us it's women's ways, not men's ways. And all the indigenous men, the clever fellas, the ones who still tell us this, have got the power. They say, oh, yeah, our ways are finished now, women now. So they're preparing a future that has to be feminine. And we've had 5,000 years of where the women have been taken away, and I'm going to tell you, it didn't work out properly. What we're trying to do in our talks is tell people this is not the way it should be. The women are the beginning of the dreaming. And see, that's how it starts. It starts with Biami and Mula Mula, never just Biami. Two together.
It's just amazing. And it's another thing that comes out of Australia that you find around the world, but predominantly and held in Australia, is the whole concept of serpent and serpent gods and rainbow gods. And I think that that's really interesting because that is one of the oldest belief systems in the world.
Yes, and of course, archaeologically, I'll go back to that first. The oldest painting of a rainbow serpent in the world, of course, is found in Australia. The Dogong aren't far behind, give them credit, but the dragon myth, the whole of that, everything about Australia is about the serpent. The serpent stands way above any other animal here. It is holy and sacred. It's where I've read stories of men riding on the backs of these serpents when they come out of water holes. Sometimes they're seen, sometimes they're not seen. It doesn't matter. There's a beautiful part to this story of the myth of the serpent. This is, we've been asked this a couple of times. Was there anyone who didn't believe it? The answer was immediate, no. It was a universal belief through the whole of this country about the serpent and its power and its wisdom, and that it all came from the serpent. So when you read the story of the Old Testament, ladies and gentlemen, you're reading the dreaming, but they just got it all mixed up on the way through. They made all these little mistakes. I'll give you an obvious one. In the dreaming, we are made from the dust of the ridges. In the Old Testament, it's just the dust. I prefer the ridges. There's more elevation to that. And do you know the story about the fact the meat was just the herbs and we're all vegetarians until the flood? Believe it or not, even in Australia, a hunter-gatherer society by army did not want man and woman to eat the meat and the blood, did he? Until a great drought, the greatest drought ever took place, and someone killed a kangaroo rat. Same story again, minor variation. The original people...
But it's really about the blood. I mean, they got this thing about the blood, which I don't really understand.
The blood. The blood is sacred. Yeah. It's the gift of the gods, so they don't like spilling it. You know, it's very important. You know, the most sacred person is a woman who is menstruating. Men can't even look at a woman who's menstruating. She's too holy for them. It's funny. In a lot of societies, we shun such women and hide them and put them in Judaic societies. They used to hide them in what was called the red tent. Was while you were menstruating, don't come near us. Go to the red tent. What they didn't realize to begin with, way back at the very beginning, the red tent was a holy place. And Judaic religion used it as a holy place, and then they messed it up again and turned it around. So the blood for original people, particularly women, see that thing again. This is what's lost in all of our social systems today. There was a reverence for the feminine that went all the way through about everything that women did. And they understood, just like the oracles of Delphi. They were the ones who led us with their spiritual wisdom. And the men had no problem with that. And we've lost that.
Is it that way in Australia? Is there more, I'm going to say, equal rights for women? Or do you find that just in the indigenous community?
No, it goes two ways in every community. In the original community, I've seen a lot of men bash their women. That happens, doesn't it, Evan? And that's out of desperation and anger and poverty and all the things that go with that. But I can tell you that quite recently in the middle, there was a big protest where the women walked through the main street and said, we don't want our men, we want to look after our men from them, they're going to be paid a different way. We want to look after the money. We want to stop them actually drinking. Look, I can tell you now, you can ask the men in the 1930s and 40s when everyone got locked up. It was the men gave up, the women stayed strong. We all know that. The women are particularly powerful in this country, always have been. There are aunties that have been our boss. In fact, I can tell you now, I would much prefer to have a blue with an elder that was a male than an elder that was a female. Evan, was that a fair call? Oh, my God, do not ever upset an original elder woman. Oh, no, I wouldn't do that. I'd take on a guy with 4 PhDs and wipe the floor with them, but not an original woman elder if we've upset them the wrong way. And the men, the original elder men, will feel the same way. So honestly, they still got it here. I mean, we've got all the mess that comes with a society that comes in and ruins a perfect situation, which we believe was the Garden of Eden. That's still messed up all around. But around the edges and in the middle, and those following the old way, they're all telling us, all the men are telling us the women are going to lead us through this. So, yeah, no one been out. I mean, there are men that got the powers. Kano's one. There are others too. But there are women who got powers too. But see, here's the trick. We know of those women, but we can't work with them directly because they're working with other women. You see, they've got their women's magic, and they give bits of it to us, and they share bits. But we can't really get involved in that because we never will. We'll just know bits and pieces of what they're doing because the real sacred stuff, they guard it, and they share it, and we get the men's part of it, and it's pretty damn strong. But the women's part, that's stronger, always, everywhere.
With shows like, I'm just kind of reaching here, with shows like Ancient Aliens on TV and people becoming more interested in metaphysics and spirituality, at least in the United States, so I can only speak from that. Do you find that in Australia there is a growing population of people that are interested in learning about the indigenous wisdom?
Yes and no. It's sort of like it's polarising, to be honest. We're getting more reality. It's those shows you just spoke about. We get none of them in Australia. We just get more reality shows to the stage where I can't think there could be any more on TV. But having said that, there are a lot of people that are sitting on the fence that are coming over. And we are seeing that. And look, I have to say the same's happened with what we've been doing 2 years ago when we're doing talks, you know. We were getting a few people along, but it wasn't a lot. Now, our last 2 talks were sold out, and we're doing a lot more, and it seems like all of a sudden a lot of people are coming, and we know that it seems like most of the shows we'll do on our own will now be sold out, but we've been around for a while saying this stuff. But, yeah, it is grabbing hold, but it's particularly grabbing hold. I'm going to be honest, this movement's coming from the original people. They're coming together, they're doing meetings in the middle, and we know of them, and they're not publicised. We know when some's taking place, and they're getting together a lot. And they're calling up the spirits, and they're getting together and becoming very strong. They're going to the International Court of The Hague to demand sovereignty. They want to separate from Australia politically. There's lots of things going on, so it is very strong there, and that's getting across to mainstream to an extent. So the answer is, we're the last country. I know Michael and Graham Hancock and Klaus and others have told us they can feel it all over the world. There's a rising of people, a renaissance of people, a bit like the 1960s and 70s. I was heavily involved in then. They feel like that's coming back. But I got to warn you, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the backwater of the world when it comes to this. We will be the last ones, and we'll go kicking and screaming into it, won't we? We won't go easily. They'll fight us. Don't forget, 70% of our press is owned by Murdoch. 85% of all our grocery lines are owned by 2 companies. We are a country that's run by a few people, and they all work together.
Yeah, a couple of monopolies.
3 people own nearly all the press in this country, and Murdoch owns 70% of it. So just think about having 70% of Foxtel all over the place. We got it everywhere. So you guys might complain about a little dabbling at 20%. So this country has been dumbed down more than any other country I've seen. The quiz shows now are appalling. The $1 million question is something that kids knew in primary school 30 years ago. We are really slow, but even so, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We are seeing people that are coming along, and there are more people that are interested, and we hear more talks about it. But, yeah, please, the rest of the world, you keep going forward because we go on your coattails. And I'm going to tell you which country we follow slavishly, America. Will you get some of those shows across to us, please? We've got all your reality ones.
Some of the good ones.
Please, for God's sake, we've got all the survival ones and everything. We've got all your ones and ours and England's, and everyone else's together. Get some of your other shows across, man. We're full of it. But, yeah, there's hope. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and it's the original people who are going to take us out there.
Do they get to have much of a voice, in society? I know you were talking about they were kicking and screaming about that one pyramid being bulldozed down to put a road in, but do they get to have much of a voice? I was doing some research on, I guess it was New Zealand, and it sounded like the Maori people really have integrated into the society, but they have a voice as a people there.
Yeah, we got one black fella in the state parliament in both houses.
Wow.
We got two. No, one in federal parliament. That's out of 100. No, in the two senates there, that's out of about 300. We have one dark-skinned person in that parliament, don't we? That's two. I believe there is a dark person in one of the state parliaments elsewhere. Oh, they have magnificent contact with mainstream. Honestly, hang on, be fair, 25% of all the people in jails are black.
Yes.
I know of one prison up in, where is it, up the top in Northern Territory, where 85% of the original people are in there for driving their cars without registration. We get those ones, don't you worry. We catch them and we put them all in jail. Yeah, they're doing really well at the moment. In fact, in Northern Territory, the Australian government, both Labor and Liberal, decided to second all their money, all their pension money goes to them first, and they must now get it, and then it's rationed off to them. And some they must spend at a shop they've chosen, and the rest of the money, they are then rationed out. They do not get money. Now, if you're a white fella in Northern Territory and you're on pension, you get your money as normal, right? If you're unemployed or disabled, you get your money as normal. But if you're a black fella and you're on pension, it goes to the government and they hand it to you. So that's what you call apartheid in Australia today, because we still have it. Oh, they are allowed to vote now, aren't they?
Yes.
I can tell you that up until 1966, in the census of 1966, Aboriginal people were counted with flora and fauna, not as human beings. So we've gone past that stage. We now count them as people, but they have 3 representatives in all of the state and federal governments, past Northern Territory, because there's a couple in there because they have to.
Yeah.
Northern Territory's got a lot of Aboriginal people. That's actually not a state, but is it?
No.
We wouldn't want that many Aboriginal people to have a state. They're just a territory, so they're still looked after by the Australian government. We look after that. So, no, they have no say in this country. They're fighting back, but I know they're having meetings and they are fighting. They don't want to be included in the Constitution, which the government's trying to do right now, which means they lose all their rights, and they're desperately trying to get any media to tell mainstream this has happened, but I've never seen them on any mainstream media ever complaining. So they have no rights and they get no say unless they say what the white fellas want to hear. We have those original people on TV and radio saying just what is comfortable and convenient, but the ones who are not happy, they don't get to speak because they're being a bit rude, aren't they, and loud. And they shouldn't be doing that.
And when you talk about percentages of population, this is something I could never really wrap my mind around. There was all the conflicts in South Africa about apartheid and Nelson Mandela and all of that. But in my mind, and maybe what I'm thinking is not correct, I would think that there were more African people in South Africa than there were white people in South Africa. And why couldn't they just take over? So do you have that same kind of percentage game happening in Australia, or has the white population really kind of taken over?
Yes. No, we were very clever when we came. We made sure of one thing. We didn't make that mistake. Because, see, the last place the English took was Australia, right? And they learnt their mistakes. First thing you got to do is you have to wipe that population out completely. Now, they're over 1 million people when they got there. Within about 100 years, they'd knocked that back down by at least 95%. So what they had to do first is wipe them out. So when they came, they gave them blankets full of smallpox, wiped in smallpox. They poisoned their flour. They shot them. They locked them up. And they made sure to begin with, they wiped the population out. So there was wholesale massacre taking place all over this country, not always with a bullet, but they made sure they locked them up and made sure they died. And then they had this other clever idea of taking the children away that were of a mixed heritage and then taking them off to a white family and breeding that blackness out of them. So we were doing this in every possible way. There is no country, and I am going to include South Africa in this because at least they counted them as being people. They did count them. Second-class citizens, yes. We didn't get that category here until the referendum, chosen by white people, of course, yes, in 1966. But I don't believe, and a lot of white people don't believe this, and a lot of Aboriginal people don't believe it's changed that much. Yes, the window dressing is the same. They make up now around about 2.5% to 3% of the population.
Okay, so they can't actually take over as such. But I got to tell you, until this gets sorted out, the whole of this nation will always suffer. Because, you see, you guys wrote treaties. You broke them, but you wrote them. This is the only group, again, the British are good at this, never signed a treaty with these people. Therefore, by all rights, they stole this country and it's never been resolved. Legally, in the International Court, Australia was never legally taken by the British. And then they had something called terra nullius, which has been kicked out of our High Court and says, well, that didn't exist. So what right did we have to take this country? So that is the major reason why they don't want the original people talking, because that conversation is a very inconvenient one. So they don't have any say unless they say the right thing.
I just don't even know what to say after that.
Nor do they. That's the problem, you see. And what they will do, and I'm all respect to the people involved, you're going to find the original people who do get chosen to vote are almost invariably sports people, because they don't want the other ones who have been working behind the scenes socially or politically to speak, because that's not what they want. So therefore they grab these sports people used to limelight, probably don't know the full story, and they become the people they used for the Constitution thing, because they want them to sign up to that. And they got these guys walking around saying, look, these original people say you've got to sign up, you've got to sign up. But all the other ones were saying, don't sign, but no one could hear them. So it's a clever system. But see, in this country, if the government decides, and Murdoch decides you're not going to be heard, good luck. You're not going to be heard unless you do it this way. So
gentlemen, we have 2 minutes. Talk a little bit about your webpage, because I know that you always are posting fantastic stuff on that. Anything else you have coming up, that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, what we try and do is to keep this issue alive. As you know, when we write new articles, we just post them up and give them out. Okay, this is the way this is done. You see, original culture is free, so therefore all the information should be free. So we put it up on our website, which is, what is it, Evan?
ForgottenOrigin.com.
ForgottenOrigin.com.
Wait, I forgot.
Yeah, he does that sort of stuff. And what we're doing this year, if you're in Australia, and we're starting in Australia, we're doing talks. As you know, we mentioned some of it. Some we're doing with an Egyptian group that are coming down in what month's that? April, May, yeah. We're doing talks with them. We're doing our own talks, and then we're doing talks with Brian and Michael. So what we're trying to do is get this word out. And what we're trying to do in this case is we're going to do it in the Sydney Town Hall, the Melbourne Town Hall, and the Adelaide Town Hall. We're going to go right into the middle of the city there and try and confront them, because these things fly flags for a month before, so they'll see these talks are on and maybe make people think about the truth. So our job over the next year, we'll give them this job. It's called Wirrichin, Black Fella, White Fella Dreaming. Our job is to get out the original truth, which will become, ladies and gentlemen, a global truth, because from here we're going to change world history and change it into what we really were, spiritual, cooperative people that occasionally fall off the rails. But this time we've been staggering off for a long time, and we've got to get back on side again. That's what we're doing.
Well, and on that note, we are going to call it a show. Thank you so much, you guys. You know, and I still feel like we just barely scratched the surface again.
Didn't even talk about the crystal skull, did we?
No, but we'll save that for another 2-hour show, I'm sure.
No, it's been fun, Rita. We appreciate it.
We really, really do. Thank you so much.
Oh, you are so welcome, and I will talk to you again soon. I'm sure I'll see you on Facebook or whatever. All right, guys, I would say good night, but it's good morning for you. So good morning, good day, and have a good night.
Okay, thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
That's Stephen and Evan Strong. Their webpage is ForgottenOrigin.com. Their book, which is excellent, I recommend it, Shunned, The Hidden History of the Original Australians. Next week, I guess if I went on the webpage, I would know what it was. Next week, we're going to be speaking with Kane Carroll about creating a spiritual practice. And so till next time, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio. Point your browser to www.justenergyradio.com for more show information and to contact Dr. Rita. Until next time, remember, it's all just energy.